I think everything that you just said, to be quite honest with you, and your brother, is completely caca.
As a biblical conservative who is black, it's good to see other conservatives or people that think the way I do engage with those who are on the liberal side of the house, because it's good that we have these exchange of ideas so they can see how off they are. And case in point, the latest example was this interview that I came across with Shelley Winter, who is a broadcaster in Atlanta. He's an independent conservative in Atlanta, black man, on the Rashad Richey show on the Young Turks. Now, Rashad Richey is a race hustler, a race grifter, always talking about race. One of those black liberals who's always talking about race, that the white man, the boogeyman, is the one that's keeping us down. So let's tune in to see this interaction between these two.
So I know you host this really, really popular conservative show on WSB. And the question is, why is it that those who are remaining in the GOP presidential race are so afraid to talk about race? They're afraid to talk against Trump. I understand that politically, as it still is a feckless leader, in my opinion, on either side. But why not be honest about racism in America? Why avoid that? Because if you avoid that part, you can't be trusted to affect remedies for it through policy if you ignore that it actually exists. So I think it's a relevant policy question.
Okay, let's talk about racism in America. Let's have an honest discussion about racism in America. As I've said in videos in the past, racism exists. It does. You want to know why? Because of the condition of the human heart. That's why discrimination exists. You cannot enact any policy to remedy racism because it's a heart issue. The only way to remedy racism is to have someone born again, to have their heart changed and transformed by the power of God and the blood of Jesus. Simple as that. No matter what policy you want to implement, affirmative action, Title IX, it does not matter. If a person is racist or sexist, it's going to come out and affect how that person interacts with you. As a black person, I understand that, I recognize that, but I don't allow that to hinder me from accomplishing the plan that God has for me. And that's the difference between a biblical conservative and these liberals on the Democratic side of the house. They remain fixated on race, on race, on race. And instead of addressing it individually, they want government, big government, to address it. That's not the way our founders intended for our country to be run. But unfortunately, that is what has happened with both Republican and Democratic administrations over the last 100 or so years.
I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One is political, and one is another reason. The first political reason is because Republicans, it's a Republican primary. There's no point in talking about race because at the highest end, only 12% of African Americans, quite honestly, are the only people really interested in having a discussion about race, are going to vote. And that's on the high end. That's if you won't probably get over 9% playing in a Republican primary. So that's one reason. Politically, it makes no sense because there's no audience for it. The second reason is, and this is something that I've come to learn, many Republicans are not comfortable talking about race. And the reason for that is because anything that they say about race is usually cherry picked for criticism by and large by the media. And so I think there's a hesitancy to speak about race for many Republicans. I have no problems talking about race because, of my background, my lived experiences, as you leftists like to call it. But I think that's really the main reason. The real question for me is why this is a three-person race right now. Haley, DeSantis, and Trump. Trump is going to run away with it, I believe. But the real question for me is why haven't the others dropped out by now?
And so when it comes to racism and race, I do think there needs to be a conversation because while racism is going to exist because it's in the human heart, we have to make sure that on the Republican or conservative side of the house that we don't just ignore it. I talk about race all the time because it's something that needs to be addressed, and needs to be addressed from a biblical standpoint. How we are all one race, essentially. How race was a construct created here in America to keep people separated. It was a governmental construct created to control people. And so if Republicans had an argument that was conducive to explaining the history of the word race and how it was used, then you could bring in more black people into your tent. But instead, like Shelley Winter said, they don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because people haven't taken the time to really dig into it and have a lucid argument to really explain that from a white perspective. They're just afraid because anything that they can say can be turned against them and say they're racist.
Let me ask you this question. Now you have a GOP that literally runs away from it. It's not that they simply won't talk about it. They ignore it. And if they're ignoring an actual dysfunction, what we would all call a social dysfunction in America that adversely impacts human beings, leads to the death of some people, leads to unfair actions toward groups of individuals. If you're telling me, well, it's because one is not political and two, they're not comfortable. That means that does a disservice policy-wise to the greater whole of America. So while they may see cause and effect relationship toward black individuals only, the reality is that cause and effect permeates beyond black people in America because it creates the dysfunction and it permeates inside of the culture, workplace, academics, et cetera. And it is a policy dynamic at the end of the day, and they're running for a policy position.
I think everything that you just said, to be quite honest with you, and your brother, is completely caca.
Hey, I want to say, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button and click subscribe so we can get this message out to as many people as we can to let them know that they are not victims, they are empowered for greatness. I agree. Caca, insane, race grifting, race hustling. That dude just went through like a minute of a soliloquy that was a bunch of words that made no sense. He is a big government dude who wants to use government to solve social problems. That's what a Marxist, that's what a progressive, that's what a liberal wants to do. They want to use government to solve the ills of society. It does not work. It does not work. It's been proven over and over and over again. All it does is create more problems. All it does is create an authoritarian system. And that's where we headed.
Unadulterated caca.
Wow.
Every corporation has a DE&I specialist. I just did training.
That's not true.
Listen, I just did training. But
that's not true. You just made a statement that's patently false. Every corporation does not have a DEI.
The vast majority of the Fortune 500 have DEI training people.
They do. The vast majority do. I've been in a number of companies, and every company I've been in, except for a small one, has had DEI training. You go through unconscious bias training. You go through sexual harassment training. You go through all of that training because they're trying to reprogram you to be more equitable.
Personnel and et cetera. I just went through here at my company an entire 2-hour online training that we had to do to keep our jobs, essentially, on sexual harassment, racism, sexism, everything.
Well, so that's a legal liability issue.
Right, exactly. So whatever reason they're doing it, they're doing it. But the point I'm trying to make is, for many conservatives, particularly Republicans, they don't see this vast monster called racism that exists in our country today.
Let's just stop. You said,
can I answer your question, brother?
Yeah,
can I
at least speak to your commentary that what I said was.
I'm saying that you said this pandemic of racism that exists that kills some people.
I never said pandemic.
Okay.
I said racism has led to the death of individuals. You have talked about it on your program as well.
Right.
So everything I'm saying is true. What part of what I said was caca?
I'm telling you, what part of it is that many conservatives don't believe that this problem.
Why do I care what they believe when I have
because you're asking them to talk about it.
Well, I'm posing.
You're asking them to talk about it. So they
you
don't
say my statement is caca because they don't believe a fact.
They don't believe it exists.
That's not a fact, man. That's your opinion. Racism is not pervasive in American culture anymore. The only reason we're talking about racism and all these things is because of the slow march through the institutions that the progressives have done to insert race into every aspect of American life, to the point to where it is ubiquitous. Everywhere we go, people are talking about racism. Race, 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 critical race theory. Race, 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 race. And so therefore, that's why people like Rashad Richey talk about race all the time. You talk about something over and over and over again to make it true, to make it so. That's why they keep repeating this lie over and over and over again. Like I said, racism exists. It does, in pockets. It's not like it was 100 years ago where it was very pervasive in the South. It exists in pockets. People are racist, but they're racist black people. Racism is going to exist, man. It is. Unfortunately, it's going to exist. But the solution we offer is not a political solution. It's a biblical one, not a political solution. That will not solve it. You can do all, people have tried over and over again. The Civil Rights Act, Title IX, all these enactments that people have put into place. But nothing has changed according to this guy. So what else needs to be done, Rashad Richey?
They don't believe a fact. But I'm Kaka. They don't believe a fact.
No, they don't believe in the idea that it's ubiquitous, that it's everywhere. So that we even have to have.
That's not what I said to you.
You did say that.
No, I did not say it was everywhere. I did not say that.
What did you say it was?
I said it's real. It's a fact. It happened.
Yes.
It permeates inside of the culture. It's a policy issue.
Sexism happens. Fatism happens. Homophobia happens. And there's hatred in this country on various reasons.
But what makes my statement a fact, Kaka?
Because what you're saying is you're attacking a group of people. You took it back to
providing question.
You're attacking a group of people because you're tying it to Trump. And you said, going back, Republicans used to talk about racism.
Wait a minute. They talked about it in the sense of policy, dear sir.
Right.
They actually created policy. Republicans actually signed off on legislation to create mandates for minority business inclusion inside of the federal government.
Right.
That's a policy.
So you don't need that anymore.
Policy dynamic.
Right. So you don't need it anymore.
Sir, understand my point.
But you don't need it anymore. If they did
I'm going to make my point, sir. My point.
You're not letting me make mine.
I'll let you respond. Okay. My point is really simple. We used to be able to have common sense conversations about things that were policy directives inside of our construct, regardless of if everybody in the party agreed with it or not. We still had the conversations. And for the most part, conservatives understood, we got some inequity issues here. Now, it seems as if the GOP, by and large, they ignore inequitable dynamics, including race, genderism, and the like. So why has that been now something they universally run away from?
What he's trying to hint at is that ever since Donald Trump has become the face of the Republican Party has become racist. That's essentially what he's saying without saying. Man, just come out and say it.
They have not. And so I just answered that question because they don't believe that there are these massive inequitable outcomes.
So when did that happen? When did they stop believing that?
Don't invite me on and then not let me answer.
When did they stop believing it, sir?
They stopped believing it when they passed the mandates, the programs, when they stopped it. Look, I don't know. 1947. I don't know, Rashad. I'm saying they stopped it when they saw the policies being passed.
Okay.
There's no point. My point to you right now is they're uncomfortable having a conversation. There's no political reason for them to have the conversation now during a Republican primary. I'm sure if Trump is the nominee and Biden's the nominee, that when they have their debate, that will be a focus of the debate. That race will be a focus of the debate.
Well, and not race, but policies to remedy racial
discrimination. Around racial discrimination, all of that. Whatever you want to spin it as, there will be a conversation.
How is that a spin? That's the actual job.
Because you already have policies against hatred, sir. You already have policies against hatred. That's all racism is. Racism is a policy against hatred. You already have it.
No, racism is not. Let me be clear with you about what racism is. Racism in the context of what we actually see in the culture is active discrimination. It's discriminatory bias.
By who?
Typically by those who are empowered to discriminate. So
whenever you listen to people like that, it takes me back to the 40s and 50s. This dude is acting as if there is active racial discrimination going on. Has he not seen all the efforts that corporate America has made to bring more diverse people. I know. I've seen it firsthand. These people like this are divorced from reality, man. They are so in their own bubble and their own agenda. They are the race grifters. They're the race hustlers, the ones who's pushing this idea that black people are victims, that we can't do anything unless policy changes. I reject that notion. We're not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Hey, I want to say, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button and click subscribe so we can get this message out to as many people as we can to let them know that they're not victims, they are empowered for greatness.